Would you keep going if every step made you more certain you should stop? This is where we unpack real 4chan stories, told by people who ended up in situations that felt impossible to explain. The story ahead builds around that uncomfortable moment when curiosity starts turning into regret. Sit back, lower the lights, and subscribe for more of these. Let's get into it. The host's opening move was to ask us to put our phones in a metal lockbox. I almost left, but 6 other people were already doing it, and I didn't want to be the only one acting paranoid. It was October 2021, a few weeks after I moved to Columbus. I found the group on Meetup. The listing said Hidden Roll Night and gave an address in Clintonville, west of Indianola Avenue. Gavin had good reviews and a custom table in his basement. Wet leaves stuck to the porch. A gray Honda sat in the driveway. Gavin opened the door before I knocked. He was thin, maybe 40, and spoke quietly. He kept smiling a second too long. "Basement's through the kitchen," he said. I smelled tomato sauce on the stove. 7 mismatched mugs sat by the sink. No one else was upstairs. The basement had brown carpet and a long wooden table with a recessed center. A space heater clicked near the stairs, giving off a dusty, hot smell. The other players were Leah, Marcus, Owen, Priya, Ben, and Tasha. None of us had met. Gavin said that made the game better. He put the lockbox on the table. "House rule, no phones. People check messages and ruin the game." Marcus laughed and dropped in his iPhone. Everyone followed. I hesitated. "You can keep yours if you need it," Leah said. Gavin looked at me. "Then everybody keeps theirs. Same rules for all players." I felt like I was holding things up, so I put mine in. Gavin locked the box and pocketed the key. I rationalized it because there was a walkout door near the shelves. I could see the deadbolt. We weren't trapped, or so it looked. Gavin handed out 7 sealed envelopes. Mine had a black dot instead of a name. "The material inside is private," he said. "Read only your own page." Owen held his envelope to a lamp. "You make this game?" "Yes." "What's it based on?" "You'll understand." Gavin dimmed the lights. Then he told us to open the envelopes. Mine held a photo of Leah outside a Kroger, taken from across the parking lot. Under it were 4 lines. Leah, works in medical billing, recently separated, keeps pepper spray on keyring, lied about how she found this group. I looked up. Leah noticed. "What? Is yours about someone here?" Nobody answered. Tasha stared at Gavin. "Where did you get these pictures?" "Some of you posted more than you remember," he said. "Some of you were easier to observe." Priya pushed her chair back. "Open the box." Marcus stood. "We're done." Gavin nodded toward the walkout door. "You can leave." Marcus pulled the deadbolt. The door opened 2 inches, then stopped. A chain had been fastened outside. "Take it off," Marcus said. Gavin looked almost embarrassed. "That isn't supposed to be noticed until later." Ben got up. "Unlock our phones." Gavin reached into his pocket. Every light went out. The heater stopped clicking. Someone knocked over a chair. A hand grabbed my shoulder and I swung before Tasha whispered, "It's me." There was movement near the shelves, a soft thump. The lights came back on. Gavin was gone. So was Owen. His chair lay on its side. The walkout door was closed again, chain still outside. The upstairs door would not open. A speaker above the shelves crackled. Gavin's voice came through it. "One player has been removed. One player among you has killed before. The basement will open when the remaining players agree on who it is." Leah shouted, "Where is Owen?" No questions during deliberation. Marcus slammed the lockbox against the table. The metal dented, but the latch held. "You have 40 minutes. A red timer lit up inside the shelving. 39:59. We yelled for Gavin and searched the shelves. Most game boxes were empty. Behind them was plywood screwed to the studs. Then Leah opened Owen's envelope. His page was about Marcus. The photo showed Marcus entering an apartment building. It said he used another first name online, had a dismissed assault charge, and owned 2 handguns. "That's not me," Marcus said. "The picture is you," Leah replied. "The rest is twisted." "You own guns?" "They're locked at home." Ben moved away from him. Each page mixed one real detail with claims we could not check. The photos proved he had watched us, so the lies felt possible. Leah's page was about Priya. It showed Priya in her car outside a church on North High Street. The text said she had been fired from a lab, used a co-worker's access card afterward, and searched how to clean blood from fabric. "I worked in a veterinary lab," Priya said. "Blood was part of the job. The access card thing was an HR dispute." "Why the church?" Tasha asked. "Why does that matter?" The timer read 31:08. Ben's page was about me. The photo showed me carrying boxes into my apartment near Bethel Road. It said I had left my last city after a co-worker disappeared. Police had questioned me, and I used a false address to join the group. Only the address was true. I had used my office zip code. Leah watched me. "Were you questioned?" "No." "Would you tell us if you had been?" "Would you?" We searched again. Marcus attacked the lockbox with a broken lamp. Ben checked the ceiling tiles. I crawled under the table. Under there, the air smelled damp and cold. One table leg had shifted, leaving a clean line in the carpet. The table was not bolted down. As I backed out, something tapped beneath me. 1 knock. Then 2. I froze with my cheek near the carpet. "Tasha, get down here." She listened. Nothing. What was it? Knocking, under the floor. The speaker came on. 25 minutes. Vote by placing a name card in the slot beside the stairs. The decision must be unanimous. A panel opened in the wall. Inside were blank cards and a marker. Marcus snapped the marker in half. We compared the remaining pages. Tasha's accused Ben of using stolen prescription pads. Priya's said Tasha had been investigated after a house fire. Marcus's accused Leah of keeping patient files. Every page had one admitted fact and one claim nobody could disprove. Then Ben found a second sheet inside his envelope. "You are safe if the group chooses Marcus." Marcus crossed the room. "You planted that." Ben shoved him. Marcus shoved back. They hit the shelves and empty boxes fell around them. The timer showed 18:44. A low sound came from under the table, weight sliding across wood. "Gavin is under us," I said. Nobody heard me, so I climbed onto a chair and shouted it. I told them about the smell and the knocking. Priya dropped to the floor. Tasha checked the table legs. "There are wheels hidden inside the feet." Marcus grabbed one side. "Move it." The table shifted an inch, then caught on something below. The speaker clicked. "Interfering with the room is a vote against yourself." "Put my name down," Tasha said. Leah pushed one finger into the card slot. "There's a wire back here." A sharp buzz sounded. Leah jerked away. A red line crossed her fingertip. The timer read 12:03. Then Owen screamed. It was faint, somewhere above us or behind a wall. He shouted one word that sounded like closet, then there was a bang. Ben smashed a chair against the upstairs door. The chair broke, the door held. "We need to choose someone," he said. We get out and call the police. If we vote, he still doesn't have to open anything, Priya said. He said he would. Marcus laughed once. You trust him now? Ben looked at the timer. We have 9 minutes. Gavin did not need us to believe there was a killer. He needed one frightened person to think voting was practical. Once a name went in, the rest of us became obstacles. I told them not to vote. Ben said, then give me another door. I pointed at the table. We flip it together. Tasha nodded. If he's under it, he can't hold the latch. Or he has a weapon, Leah said. Then don't stand over the opening. The speaker came on. Gavin sounded closer. 7 minutes. Marcus and Ben took one side. Priya and Tasha took the other. Leah held a broken chair leg. We lifted. A bolt scraped underneath. The table stopped. Again, Marcus said. Dice spilled from a drawer and bounced over the carpet. The speaker shouted, "Stop." On the second lift, one hidden wheel folded sideways. The table tipped onto its edge with a crash that shook dust from the ceiling. Under it was a square plywood hatch, open 6 inches. A hand pulled away below. Marcus brought the lamp base down before the hatch could close. Tasha jammed a chair leg into the gap. We heard fast crawling. The passage was lined with fresh lumber and ran toward the back of the house. Gavin was already gone. The timer kept counting. 3:31. Marcus climbed in. We followed on hands and knees. Sawdust stuck to my palms. Ahead of us, a panel slammed. The passage ended at a ladder. Marcus pushed up a hatch into the attached garage, behind plastic bins. He opened the side door. Cold rain blew across the concrete. We ran around the house yelling for Owen. A neighbor came out with a flashlight. Leah used his phone to call 911. Marcus took a tire iron and went inside with him. We found Owen in a pantry off the kitchen. A new hasp had been screwed to the outside. Marcus pried it loose. Owen was sitting on the floor with his wrists taped in front of him. He was awake. A cloth bag lay beside him. Gavin came through the wall, he said. There was a door behind the shelves. Police searched the property and passage. Gavin was gone. The Honda belonged to someone else. The house was a furnished rental. The meetup account was fake. Most of our photos had been taken during the previous 2 weeks. An officer pried open the lockbox and handed back our phones. Mine had been powered off. There was one extra phone at the bottom. It was still recording audio. The officer stopped it and asked which of us had put it there. None of us had. The driver showed me a hospital transport pass that looked real enough to get someone killed when the white van came through. In June of 2022, I worked the overnight booth at a hospital parking garage in Baltimore, a few blocks east of Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. The garage connected to the older hospital through a side corridor on level B. Transport vans sometimes used us after midnight. My booth controlled the lower entrance and the only vehicle exit. It was barely wider than a closet, with a floor fan, a microwave that smelled like burnt soup, and 6 camera feeds. Buses on the street made the glass tremble. At 1:37 a.m., a plain white Ford Transit rolled up to the entrance arm. There was no company name on it. The driver was around 40, broad through the shoulders, with short hair and a dark blue polo. He held a paper pass against his window. It had the hospital logo and "Temporary Transport" printed across the top. I asked him to slide it through the drawer. "The scanner at the annex is down," he said. "Patient pickup." That was believable. We had card readers failing after a storm earlier that week. I called Darnell, the night security guard, on the radio. "Transport van at lower gate. Temporary pass." After a pause, he said, "Let him through. They're moving people because of the air conditioning problem." I raised the arm. On camera 4, the van backed up to the side corridor. A man in green scrubs came out with an empty wheelchair. He and the driver went inside. About 15 minutes later, they returned with an older patient wearing gray sweatpants and hospital socks. They loaded him into the van and left the wheelchair by the wall. At the exit, I asked for a trip number. The driver held up the same paper. They didn't give me one. They always do. "Call upstairs." I called the patient movement desk. Keisha answered and searched the system. "I don't see anything leaving from the South Annex," she said. "Could be arranged by hospice." "Should I hold him?" "If the pass is valid, let him go. I'll message the floor." So I let him go. Then a pickup truck backed into a post on level 2. By sunrise, the van felt like another paperwork problem. 3 nights later, it came back. Same van, same driver. This pass had a yellow stripe at the top. "Back again," he said. "What company?" "Metro Patient Transfer." I checked the approved list taped beside my monitor. That name wasn't there. "Slide the pass through." He smiled. "You checked it last time." A nurse in a Honda Civic pulled in behind him and tapped her horn. The driver lifted the paper higher. "I've got someone waiting." I should have kept the arm down. I thought I was delaying a sick person because of an outdated list. I wrote down the plate instead. Maryland tag, ending in 7K2P. The van parked in the same place on level B. This time the driver entered alone. 11 minutes later, he came back pushing a woman in a rolling hospital chair. She wore a thin jacket over her gown. Her ankles were bare and swollen. A clear plastic bag rested in her lap, with a phone charger and glasses inside. When he opened the rear doors, she turned toward camera 4. Her mouth moved. I couldn't hear her, but she was looking right up at the lens. He stepped between her and the camera, then loaded her inside. At the exit, I asked for the trip number again. He held up a clipboard. "Call Unit 6. There is no Unit 6 on my list. It's a clinical designation. What's the patient's name?" His expression changed. He didn't look angry. He looked annoyed that I had asked. "You don't need that." A dull bump came from the back, followed by metal rattling. The driver leaned closer. I could smell peppermint gum through the drawer. "You're holding up a discharge." I called Keisha. She put me on hold. Cars stacked up behind the van, and a man in a pickup got out to complain. Then Darnell came over the radio. "Open the lane. We'll handle it inside." I opened it. The driver watched me as he passed. The next morning, I emailed my supervisor, Melissa, with the plate and company name. 2 nights later, Darnell said the plate belonged to a rental fleet. Security couldn't find Metro Patient Transfer. I showed him the saved video. The second time, nobody brought the patient out, I said. Darnell watched the driver enter alone, then come back with the woman. "You sure that's the same guy?" I rewound it. He called someone and stepped outside. Through the glass, I heard him say, "Badge access." Then, "No, not one of ours." After that, the hospital changed the rule. Every transport needed a digital trip number. Paper passes were no longer enough. For a week, nothing happened. Then the van returned at 2:41 on a Thursday morning. I recognized the headlights before it reached the booth. The driver wore gray scrubs under a reflective vest. A hospital badge hung backward from his chest. Rainwater ran down the ramp behind him, and the garage smelled like wet concrete and hot brakes. He pressed the call button. "Gate. Trip number?" "Scanner's down." Trip number. He held up another paper pass. I kept the arm lowered. He tapped the glass with one finger. Open it. I need the number. You know me. No, I don't. He looked at the camera above the lane. Then he reversed so fast the tires chirped. Instead, he turned into the employee exit lane and drove around the lowered arm. His mirror clipped a plastic "Do Not Enter" sign and knocked it flat. I grabbed the radio. Darnell, white van forced into the garage. No answer, only static. The van disappeared down the ramp toward level B. I called security and gave the dispatcher the plate and location. Then I pulled up camera 4. The rear doors were already open. The driver stood beside a man on a stretcher. The corridor door was closing. I couldn't see who had brought the stretcher out. The patient wore a white blanket up to his chest. One arm hung over the side. The driver started pushing him into the van. I locked the exit arm and raised the steel bollard in the outbound lane. It came up with a hard clunk. On the monitor, the driver stopped. He looked at the camera. Then he walked toward my booth. He wasn't running. He carried a long metal flashlight in his right hand. The reflective vest was gone. I locked the booth door and called 911. He came to the window and knocked once. Open the gate. I didn't answer. He knocked harder. Open it, and I leave. I put the phone on the counter so the dispatcher could hear. The driver stepped back and studied the exit arm. Then he looked through the glass at the red light on my control panel. He knew I had locked it. He raised the flashlight and hit the window. A white star appeared near the lower corner. The sound inside the booth made the floor fan jump. He hit it again. The crack climbed toward the middle. Small chips landed beside the register, and the damaged seal let in the smell of rain. I moved behind the cabinet. Under a plastic cover on the control panel was the switch for the fire doors between level B and the upper ramp. They were heavy rolling gates, normally left open. He lifted the flashlight again. I broke the cover with my palm and pressed the switch. A warning bell started below us. The driver froze. On camera 4, a steel gate began dropping across the only ramp out of level B. His van was on the other side. He leaned toward the broken window and saw it on my monitor. You stupid bitch. Then he ran. Not toward the van, toward the stairwell. I watched him cross 2 camera feeds, shove through the stair door, and disappear. The fire gate reached the floor a few seconds later. The van was trapped. Hospital security arrived first, with police close behind. Darnell was with them. His radio battery had died while he was dealing with a visitor near the emergency department. They searched the garage and nearby streets. The driver was gone. The van had been rented using the identity of a Virginia man whose wallet had been stolen months earlier. The hospital badge was fake. The temporary passes used real logos, but the approval numbers had been copied from old forms. Inside, police found a hospital stretcher with a broken rail, sealed syringes, sedatives, and 2 oxygen tanks. A tackle box held pill bottles with labels peeled off. There was no patient in the van. The man on the stretcher had been left in the corridor when the driver saw the exit lock activate. Staff found him near the side door, alive and still wearing his hospital bracelet. His discharge had been entered, but no transport company had been assigned. Behind the passenger seat was a plastic grocery bag. It contained a wallet, a watch, and a phone in a cracked black case. They belonged to a patient named Leonard, who had disappeared from the hospital 4 days earlier. I had never heard Leonard's name before that morning. The woman from the second pickup was identified later, but nobody at work would tell me what happened to her. Keisha stopped answering questions. Melissa said the investigation was active, and staff were not allowed to discuss patient information. The hospital replaced the booth glass. They installed a badge reader at the side corridor and moved a camera so it actually showed who came through the door. I worked 2 more overnight shifts. During the second one, maintenance tested the fire gate. The warning bell made the same flat mechanical sound it had made while that man stood outside my window. I handed Melissa my keys before sunrise. A dead patient whose chart changed was a man named Walter, who had been buried for 11 years. It was October 2010 when I worked nights in the records archive of a Boston hospital. It sat under the old surgical wing, below the lowest public elevator button. I reached it through a staff corridor near Harrison Avenue and a service elevator that smelled like bleach and warm metal. My shift was 10 at night to 6 in the morning. I scanned forms and fixed indexing errors. I also pulled paper charts. We still had long rows of motorized cabinets packed with folders. At 2:18 one Tuesday morning, the system flagged Walter's chart as modified. He had died in 1999. I assumed billing had attached something to the wrong account. One wrong digit could do that. I opened the audit log. Walter's address had been changed to a 3-decker in Dorchester. A current 617 phone number had been added. The change came from terminal B17. The terminal map listed B17 as inactive. It belonged to a sub-basement records room that had closed before I started there. I called Marcus, the overnight IT guy. Can a disconnected terminal still show up in an audit log? Sometimes. What's the number? B17. I heard him stop chewing. That one shouldn't exist. Meaning what? Meaning the network line was removed. He said he would check later. I printed the audit page and went back to scanning. 40 minutes later, another dead patient updated. Her name was June. She died in 2003. Her date of birth had been changed, making her 9 years younger. A new insurance field appeared under her name. Same terminal. I searched the previous week and found 6 more deceased patients with small changes to basic information. Addresses and phone numbers had changed. So had several birth dates. No medical notes had been added. Whoever did it cared only about the details used to prove identity. That was when I noticed the copier. There was one running below me. Our archive had 2 Xerox machines, and I knew the noises they made. One squealed when it pulled paper, the other beeped twice. This machine gave a slow, heavy clunk, followed by the dry slide of a page under glass. The sound came through the floor near the back wall. Clunk, then silence. I stood beside the cabinets and listened. The fluorescent lights buzzed. The room smelled of paper dust and lemon floor cleaner. My desk phone rang. The caller ID was blank. "Records," I said. Nobody answered. I could hear a low mechanical hum and someone breathing close to the receiver. The call ended. The internal log showed extension 7714. The staff directory had no listing for it. I should have called security. I knew that even then. But all I had was a database problem and a strange call tied to a copier. I decided to find the machine first. The sub-basement door was hidden behind a rolling shelf at the end of the archive. It was painted beige and marked Authorized Engineering Access Only. Its electronic lock showed green. My badge flashed red. The latch clicked open anyway. Beyond it was a narrow concrete stairwell with exposed pipes. Cold air moved up the steps, carrying the smell of hot toner. I wedged the door open with a plastic wastebasket and went down. The lower door was propped open with a brick. Past it, the old records room stretched into darkness. Empty shelves stood in rows. In the center, an old Canon copier worked under a hanging lamp. No one was beside it. A page slid into the tray. It was Walter's death certificate. The copier lid was closed, but there was nothing on the glass. A thick cable ran from the machine into a side office. I heard typing from inside. I moved behind a shelf and looked through a gap. A man sat at a desk with 2 monitors. He was around 60, with thin gray hair and a blue dress shirt. An expired hospital badge hung from his belt. The badge said Dr. Evan. I recognized him from an old staff photograph in the administrative hallway. Someone had drawn a black line through his face with marker. His desk held certificates, insurance cards, social security forms, and blank license applications. One screen showed the patient database. The other showed a living man beside Walter's name and birth date. Evan dragged a scanned document into Walter's chart. The copier clunked behind me. I stepped back and touched the cable with my shoe. The machine stopped. So did the typing. "You can come in," Evan said. His voice was calm, like he was calling someone from a waiting room. I stayed where I was. I know the door opened. His chair rolled back. He stood. I moved toward the stairwell, keeping the shelf between us. Evan walked along the other side at the same speed. "You work upstairs," he said. "Night records." I kept moving. "You saw the audit flag." I reached the doorway. Evan stepped around the shelf. He had a syringe in his hand. I ran up the stairs. The wastebasket still held the upper door open. I could see the bright archive floor. A sharp beep came from below. The magnetic closer released. The heavy door folded the plastic basket and slammed shut. I grabbed the handle. Locked. Evan entered the stairwell below me and closed the lower door. "Open it!" I shouted. No one answered from the archive. Evan stopped a few steps below the landing. "Come back downstairs," he said. I kicked the door and yelled for security, but the archive was separated from the main basement by fire doors. The sound went nowhere. There was a wall-mounted fire extinguisher beside me. I pulled it free and pointed it at him. The metal pin rattled against the handle because my hands would not stay still. Evan looked at it. "That won't help." He did not come closer. Marcus had once mentioned service tunnels connecting the old hospital buildings. Records clerks used them for document carts. If this room still connected to one, there was another exit. I stepped down toward Evan and fired the extinguisher. White powder filled the stairwell. He covered his face. I pushed past him, hit his shoulder with the cylinder, and ran into the old records room. The copier had started again. I followed the cable into Evan's office. On the floor beside his desk was a black Western Digital external drive connected to the computer. I pulled it loose. A control panel was open on the monitor. It managed the electronic cabinet locks upstairs. Every row showed unlocked. I clicked Secure All. The cabinets slammed shut above me, one after another. The noise shook dust from the ceiling. Evan coughed in the next room. I took the drive and ran through the office's rear door. The next room was dark. I found a switch and 2 bare bulbs came on. A man and a woman were lying on hospital stretchers. Both were breathing. Their wrists were strapped to the rails, and clear IV bags hung beside them. On a folding table were 2 complete sets of identification: driver's licenses, insurance cards, employee badges, library cards. The photographs matched the people on the stretchers. The names did not. The man's documents said Walter. The woman's said June. June opened her eyes, but they would not focus. "Please," she whispered. I heard Evan behind me. He stood in the doorway with extinguisher powder across his shirt. Blood ran from one side of his mouth. "Put the drive down." Behind the stretchers was a metal door marked Document Transfer Tunnel. A chain hung through the handle. The padlock was open. Evan saw me look at it and moved fast. I slipped through the door and pulled it shut. His hand hit the other side. I looped the chain through the handle and snapped the padlock closed. He struck the door once. "Open this." I ran. The tunnel was narrow, with rubber bumpers along the walls. The floor sloped upward and smelled damp. Behind me, metal banged as Evan worked on the lock. The passage split at a painted arrow. One side led to pathology, the other led to South Pavilion. I chose South Pavilion because there was a security desk near the emergency entrance. The tunnel ended at a locked gate. For a second, I thought I had trapped myself. Then I found a red crash bar on the wall side. I pushed it. An alarm started. I came out in a supply room stacked with boxes of gloves. A nurse named Denise stood at a sink. She stared at the hard drive in my hand and the white dust on my clothes. "Call security," I said. "There are 2 people downstairs." She did it without asking anything. Guards entered the tunnel within minutes. Boston police arrived soon after. Evan could not use the stairwell because the locked cabinets blocked the upper door. He had jammed one trying to force it open. The man and woman were taken upstairs and survived. I never learned their real names. Police found more identity packages inside sealed file boxes, along with copied records from hospitals around Massachusetts. Marcus recovered the audit logs. The external drive held scan certificates and ID templates. There were also photographs of people who were still alive. It also contained a list of dead patients whose records had been changed. There were 43 names. Investigators spent months pulling access reports. Evan's badge had been reactivated through a contractor account, and a maintenance request had restored power to the old room. Nobody could tell me who approved the network connection or reactivated his badge. The hospital sealed the tunnel and replaced every sub-basement lock. They also disabled Terminal B17. The device list said otherwise. On my final night there, Marcus showed it to me. B17 was still checking into the network every few minutes. The signal was not coming from the old records room anymore. It was coming from somewhere inside South Pavilion. Well guys, that's it for today. Comment your reaction below, tell me if this episode worked for you, and subscribe for more stories pulled from 4chan. Some of these posts start like ordinary confessions, then slowly become something you wish you could unread. So don't overthink the darkness tonight, but don't ignore it completely either. I'll see you in the next one.